By the end of this video, you will leave with the exact frameworks that I use in order to extract the most amount of value out of every single lead that comes into your pipeline. And this very simple 4-step framework works for pretty much any sort of webinar or online coaching offer that you have, or any live events that you may have run in the past. And I call this the AI-assisted ladder converting method, which is something that I'll explain in detail in today's video. Now, the 4 steps, as you can see here on screen, are receiving the leads, vetting them, and then filtering out the bad leads and only working with the good ones. And lastly, using AI to appointment set these leads into your pipeline and fix them as revenue producers. And we're going to run through this 4-step framework using a case study. So this is a coaching business that I automated. If you're doing any sort of info, you probably already know this, but basically you put out free content, and this content is the first touch point that educates your leads. This is usually for free or it costs you a very little amount. This is then converted into your first paying traffic. And this is very important because it separates the buyers from the non-buyers. Then obviously in this case, we're selling a high ticket info product. This may be somewhere in the high 3-figure to 4-figure range, depending on the volume of the coaching business. But essentially, this is for the more serious buyers. So we want to be able to, at this point, we want to be able to make sure that the leads are only of the highest quality and are the most likely to convert on this info product. Next, we go on to like private programs. This is more if you're running mentorships or exclusive live events, private mastermind groups and all that stuff. So this is like really one-on-one and more, much more intimate way of knowledge transfer. And I'm sure people charge anywhere from like high 4 figures to 5 figures even for this, either on retainer or just as a one-time flat fee. So we're going to be discussing how to break down each component and also how the 4 stages that we just discussed, how they fit into making sure that the leads are passed on as efficiently as possible without you having to spend hours and hours deciding through platforms or weeding through leads yourself. Especially in 2025, all of this can be AI automated to some extent. And I'll show you how I did it for my client. So the first touchpoint is one that I see very commonly, which is a questionnaire. If you're receiving any sort of leads that come in from your content, another good reason to use Typeform is actually they have a built-in automation system in place. So you can connect things like Zapier, Make, or also using webhooks. You can send all of this. What this will allow you to do is make sure that you have sequences in place. And now I know this isn't directly AI, but this is still automation in and of itself. So you can use Typeform's native automation tool in order to connect things like your spreadsheet or just have like autoresponders, messages, follow-up messages and all that stuff. But at this stage, the issue is still that we're not qualifying every single lead. We're not making sure that we're dealing with the best sort of leads. So how do I attract the right quality of leads? And this is where we start using LLMs to aggregate data. So for example, let's say you're collecting budget of the leads that you want to work with, and you don't want to work with people that have less than 5K in their savings. So what you can actually do is have a voice AI agent that exclusively reaches out to those leads that you want to work with. And in this case, with the budget, you'll also collect things like your first name, the last name, the email, and also the phone number. And this phone number can actually be contacted by an AI agent. This agent can be hosted on Retail AI, Bland AI, Vapi as well, which is also a good one. But essentially, once you've collected those leads, you can tell the agent to only call those back that have serious buying intent. And this can be done using a very simple vetting system on make.com. And what this does is what this does for you is that your leads now are prioritized by the highest value in the pipeline. And of course, with these systems in place, you don't have to spend valuable time vetting every single lead manually. Now, once we have these good quality leads, how do we actually go about sorting all of them in our sheet? And this is where the field formulas come into play. This is actually from the second sheet that I made for one of my ecom clients a while back. But essentially, we're getting the conversion rate of the agent, so the number of sales divided by the amount of interactions. Now, there's a bunch more formulas, but essentially the 2 main ones that you need to be wary of are agent conversion rate and return on agent cost. Now, this goes for both voice and text-based agents. So this is now not just AI callers, but also like agents on your website that you may have deployed, or perhaps you have a number on your website or on your Instagram where people can text, and then an agent takes over from there. The point here is that you're optimizing for the highest lead conversion value. So we want to target those that are the most likely to go all the way up the value ladder. And this can be done based on a number of criteria. I made a video on how to do marketing lead qualification on like a broader level. We're trying to only work with those leads that at the beginning of the pipeline, at the beginning of the ladder, they show the highest probability of going all the way up and converting on the higher sort of tiered products. Essentially, we're doing that, but for the lowest possible cost per sale, which means that the 2 KPIs that we need to look at is how much we're actually spending for these agents, because these agents do take up a few cents in API calls and everything else in combined, which means that if you're dealing with, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 leads a month, this can add up very, very quickly. But this is only possible if your agent's prompt is airtight. So there can't be any holes in the sort of sequence or the role of the agent, and everything needs to be outlined in a very structured way and have a very clear path on what the agent has to do in order to close them. Or if they don't express interest, maybe you send them to like an email sequence or a discount code. Next, we move on to appointment setting, and I'm sure you've seen like voice AI setters. This is very similar, except instead of feeding it all the leads that come in through your, let's say, your low ticket program or your lead magnet, instead of doing that, we just populate our Excel sheet using those leads that have the highest chance to convert later down the line. And this is actually the foundations of the agent that I built for one of my clients. So essentially, you're using retail AI. I've tried Vapi and I've tried a couple other ones. They don't seem to work as good as retail, and I just prefer the tonality and the cadence that these assistants have. But essentially, we're using all that data. We're sending it through webhooks into make.com, which then populates a Google Sheet, which then does three things upon confirmation. First of all, it would send you a message on Slack in order to actually confirm that this, yes, I would like to work with this lead one-on-one. Next, it populates a Google Sheet that would be used as training data for the agents that actually qualify the leads in the first place. So once you've run a funnel for, let's say, 90 days, you can take the data of those that converted on the highest paying products, and you can use it in order to vet and filter out leads in stage 2 and 3. So this is really what brings all of the previous three systems together to culminate in this ecosystem of automations that will just keep improving and improving every single time you run a new offer. Now, lastly, I've added a Stripe payment processor. You can actually take payment on the call, or at least confirmation of the payment on the call, and then you can send them a link through the checkout page via a SMS. That way, the assistant makes sure that they've paid on the spot, and then from there, they will go on to your onboarding sequence and etc. But I've actually made this specific automation in detail, and I explain all of this in a previous video that I've made. And I've built this entire thing out for you. You can find like prompts, you can find the exact Excel sheet, you can find the sort of messages and all that stuff, and the make scenarios will also be there. But now you essentially have all the keys that are the fundamentals, basically, to managing a live event, webinar, info product funnel, which is basically receiving and vetting the leads using basic automations, and then filtering and actually reaching back out to those leads using voice agents and text-based agents. And I also want to mention that this is a very small portion of the complete acquisition AI systems that I built. But I'll leave it at that. I hope this was of value to you. So thank you for your time.